Minecraft is a bunch of structures, and many of them have been transformed by the community, but some have been overlooked. Today, I'm going to be transforming 7 Minecraft structures that are kind of forgotten about, as a way to help improve my building skill. For day 1, I was transforming the Mineshaft. I decided to go for a main entrance as the main focal point and a little diorama of a mineshaft. I started off with the terrain and made it very mountainy. Next, I built up the pillars using polished basalt. Between the pillars, I put arches. I used frog lights behind the arches as a way to light up the build and give more color. I continued building up the walls until I thought they were tall enough, and for the roof, I decided to go with 3 different sections, 2 half roofs and 1 full roof. The mountain wasn't big enough, so I raised it up and finished the roof. Then I added a big door. After that, I worked on the little diorama and used spruce and dark oak to make the more elevated mineshaft. For day 2, I was transforming the Igloo. I started off by shaping the build. I used a half sphere as the base of the tower in order to keep some of that igloo shape. Instead of snow, I used quartz as it has stairs and slabs, and I used warped wood above ice for the same reason. I started off the detail by doing the quartz parts. I used diorite and mushroom stems as contrasting white blocks to break up the flat quartz. I went for light blue glass as the window color, as it was the closest glass color for ice. For the warp wood parts of the fortress, I used copper and prismarine as the contrasting cyans. In the walls, I mixed some cyan wool to add more interest with the build. After that, I did some landscaping by building a path and building some spruce trees. On day 3, I was transforming the Illager outpost. While I think the outpost is one of the better looking Minecraft structures, I thought it could still use more detail and to make the build a bit taller so it could be more imposing. At the bottom, I used a lot of dark oak slabs and stairs to detail the foundation. Once the foundation was tall enough, I started tapering the build in while using also a gradient. At the top of the build, I used the classic dome shape that the outpost has, and I added some spruce to the dome so it wasn't just plain dark oak. For the terrain, I added some walls around the outpost, added some tents, added an iron golem as a prisoner, and added some training dummies, and lastly, I added some spruce trees. For day 4, I was doing the witch hut. Since the original is just oak, I decided to go with more magical colors, such as purples and pinks. I started with 2 colored cylinders as the base shape. For the smaller cylinder, I added a warped wood roof and some flower beds. For the whole build, I used dark oak and spruce as the accent blocks. If you are enjoying this video, consider liking and subscribing as it would be much appreciated. Anyways, for the roof of the build, I went with a contrasting yellow and tapered the build into the signature witch hat curve. For the landscaping, I added a couple of custom trees. For day 5, I did the ruined nether portal. I started by making a large nether portal and covering parts of it with magenta glass. Since the glass did some weird things with the rendering of the portal, I added frog lights behind the portal. I then added a big base with a large staircase. For the supports on the side of the portal, I went with mangrove, red nether brick, and gold for the colors, and built it in a very ornate style. After that, I did some landscaping by adding some lava pools and adding pods all around to look like burnt grass. For day 6, I was doing the desert well. For this, I decided to go with a tempo oasis type build and used a bunch of different colors and blocks. I used sandstone, birch, jungle, bamboo, acacia, and oak all in the build. I added some water to the bottom of the base, and as the build got higher, I made it more and more red. For the terraforming, I added some palm trees, and that was it. For day 7, it was the dungeon. I started off shaping out a maze-like catacombs area with chest rooms, spawners, and tombs. As the current box isn't anything really that special, I decided to make an access point to the surface and decided to make a large tower. Using deep slate with cyans as the color palette, I started to build up a circular tower. For these towers, I love adding as much roof variations as I can, as it gives it a ton of depth to the build. I kept tapering the build inward until we got to a pretty thin top of the tower. I personally think the top of the tower could be improved, but I didn't feel like scrapping a whole bunch of work, so I just kept it. For the terrain, I added some spruce trees, and that was it. And now that the builds are all done, on to the glamour shots. Next week, the theme is biome castles. I hope you have a great life.